He judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So God uses him. He leads despite these egregious weaknesses. He's still in leadership. Have you ever wondered why some people are able to do what they do, serve as they serve, lead as they lead, despite some fairly obvious shortcomings? If you've been a leader, have you ever wondered, why am I allowed to keep leading despite some pretty obvious character weaknesses? It's interesting. God will use us, and in a time of spiritual danger when something radical needs to be done, God seems to use all kinds of people. Just a side note on these 20 years. You'll notice in the book of Judges, sometimes the judge is 20 years or 40 years or 80 years, or there are periods of peace that last 40 years, and so forth. Of course, it could be a literal 20 years in Samson's case. But since most of the annual periods in Judges seem to be multiples of 20, I'm not so sure it is. Perhaps instead of 40 years, which might signify a full term of office, this was broken. This was a broken term, 20 or half of 40. Maybe that simply means he didn't do half of what he could have done, really because of his carelessness and his subsequent capture by the Philistines. Now, in summary, again, it is amazing how some people get into positions of leadership. We should not think that the editor of Judges is glorifying Samson's exploits. They are colorful, no doubt, tearing a lion to pieces, catching foxes and tying their tails together. And this guy, he's colorful. But there's nothing glorified about the things he does. When he gets up in the night and he carries the city gate on his shoulders and a distance of many miles away. I wouldn't say these exploits are glorified. They are related, though, without a whole lot of comment. If any commentary comes through, it's the implicit commentary that this man is immature. This is still a time of chaos, a time of spiritual chaos, as the final section of Judges will emphasize. And we see that particularly in chapters 17 to 21. Well, I've got some ideas for further study for you in the notes, and some links and some pictures and the key verses. And this time we have a lot of material for kids if you want to do devotionals or discussions. But what do we learn about God through the Samson cycle, as it's called? Well, there are three things I see. One, and this was based on our earlier discussion of 14:4, God works even through our mistakes to accomplish his purposes. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, in a way it is, there's grace, but in a way it isn't, because it's never okay to disobey God. But God, with his advantageous position, knowing the future, knowing what's happening, he's ready, and he's able to work even through bad life choices for glory for himself. Secondly, in times of spiritual chaos, God may just work through a radical, even through someone who is emotionally or spiritually immature. And third, there are serious consequences when we renege on our spiritual commitments.